viewers today, and on Kamilla Singh show, it's my honor and pleasure to have these two people in here. They are very well known in the community and they are doing different altogether. Nature of the work that they do is very different. So we want to bring these two together and talk about how could we all work together to know what's happening in the society right now. So with my extreme left is Dr. Balbir Gurm, and she is with KPU. She's Dr. Balbir Gurm, and you got an award recently from the provincial government, right?
Yes, from the BC Achievement Foundation.
Congratulations, first.
Thank you, G.
And next to her is Shannon Sharanya, and we have spoken to him on Asian Pulse TV, and he's a mentor, he's a coach. You might have seen, he's with Kids Play Foundation, and you would have seen him on television recently to talk about gang violence. So this is what I'm saying. There are two different people, two different issues, but we'll combine it, bring it together, and just talk what's happening in our society today. How do we not feel safe today? So welcome both of you. Dr. Balbir,
Yes.
just introduce yourself and the work that you have done. And you were a nursing instructor when I first came to know you, but a lot has happened since then.
Yes, I have been teaching nursing for, over a quarter century, let's put it that way. And I've been doing a lot of community work around various issues on whether it's anti-racism or identity or relationship violence, various different things. And right now I'm working on other grants which are related to relationship violence, but we're trying to figure out how do we prevent it in the first place, right? And we have some knowledge from our research, but to try to get it into the community is going to be our next project that we're applying funding, we're applying to get funding for from a national body, is to see, okay, now that we know this from, doing research, how do we put it in an organization so the organization can do it? And you said we were actually two different fields, and I'm going to say I'm healthcare, but in my work around relationship violence, and we define relationship violence as two people who know each other who can abuse each other,
Yes.
right? And to me, gangs are one form of relationship violence. So I think, even though you thought we were totally different, we're going to have a lot in common, but I will come and talk about it from a healthcare perspective, which will be different from the mentoring perspective.
Thank you. Thank you for, saying that, because, yeah, you cannot take anything out of it. It's everything is sort of, can deal with one and not the other.
Yeah, it's all interrelated.
Yeah. So, you...
So I work as a mentor and coach, as you have mentioned. My main business is coaching, consulting, and I work with business owners across the world, from anyone with barbershop to scientists and engineers to CEOs of different companies. And then my volunteer work is with youth and families and going into schools, like you said, working alongside Kids Play is one of the organizations I'm affiliated with or associated with. And I do that because my experience has been, I've been involved in drugs and gangs myself. I was lost as a youth myself and got into that life when as early as 13 and lasted till I was 23, 24. I'm very lucky to be out of that, so I would like to go back and share my experiences. But not only share my experiences, also bring in what I've learned from coaching and mentoring and what's been helping human beings and what to look at in our inner world. Because that's what shifted for me, looking inside and not just redecorating the external world all the time. And that's what I love to help the kids with. So I run mentorship programs for youth, I do work with families, wherever I can help and provide the things that I've learned.
And you do one-to-one support with the family as well.
I do.
If there is an issue in the family with the children and all that, so you make them sit down together and talk to them. So Dr. Balbir, just talk a little bit about because we cannot separate these two.
No.
It's part of it, part and parcel of it. What do you, and you also wrote a book.
Yes.
Your specialty that I know that you do domestic violence and things like that. You also started an organization in Surrey, bringing all the organizations together that deal with domestic violence, and you hold monthly meetings and things like that.
Yes.
But how do you see these two going hand in hand together?
So gang violence is a form of relationship violence, as is domestic violence. There are various theories on why it happens. So we think some of it is power and control. Some of it is just learned behavior. It transfers from generation to generation. Some of it is not feeling like you're connected. So in a lot of the gang life, the people will look at, or whoever is getting involved, doesn't feel connected to either their school or their home life or whatever, or they just want power. So there's various connections between the two. If you have a home life where you witness abuse, you yourself normalize that behavior, right? And you think it's an okay way to be, and to hit people, shoot people like they do in gang violence, but it's all stems from an earlier understanding of how do you communicate, what's a healthy relationship, how do you handle conflict, right? And so if we can get that within our families, then usually children don't go, and it's never 100%, right? When we talk about what we know from research, it's always big data, it's not individual. So in that respect, one of the best things we can do is prevention. We always say an ounce of prevention is like a pound of service, right? So if we can start with doing some work when people first find out they're pregnant, and do parenting and healthy relationships at that time, then we have a fighting chance, because what we're finding is even when the embryo is forming, so before you even have the baby, if you are fighting, if you are being abused, it is changing the neurobiology of the fetus, right? And long-term consequences of it are the obvious, or the depressions and the psychological impacts. But what people don't realize, there's also a correlation with some of our chronic illnesses like cancer, diabetes, right? Heart disease, the three big ones. And we really need to take a look at what we're doing in our families from the beginning. And it's not just families, it's television, it's media, all kinds of media. It's music that we listen to, right? A lot of the music sensationalizes gangs and power and control. And so then that gets normalized. And people think, oh, well, I can get quick money, right? And sometimes families know that their children are involved in gangs, but they don't acknowledge it. And when we see them on television and they'll say, oh, my son was so good, and there's all these witnesses, oh yeah, he was an excellent role model. But when you talk to the police, they visited that home many times. And they won't say that in public, and I'm saying it, but it's not applying to any single person. But generally in our data, we know that they have been visited by police. Those parents were informed, right? But because of the dynamics, or for whatever reason, they let go and they don't address it. Because, like I said, the time to address it is from before a child is born and then all through. I feel like in healthcare, we need to provide that support. We have to start from before the child is born, doing all those prenatal visits, right? Talking about healthy relationships, parenting, etc. And then we could get better outcomes, and people like my friend here would not have to be so heavily involved in helping turn it around. Yeah.
That's a very good scenario, whatever you discuss, that we need to start right from the bottom, right from the front. I was going to ask you, because recently the police has published the name of the gangsters, and there are 11 or 12 of them, and they are out of that, about 6 or 7 are South Asian names, because I look at television too, and I also have families that are part of law enforcement. Do you think it's a good way of bringing these gangsters out in the public, or it might, or is not?
So that's a really good question. There's different perspectives on that. So I would say, in one way, I think the intention the police have is really good, because they're trying to say beware of these people.
Yes.
In another way, if I'm going to look at the perspective of the people that are named, it's extremely bad. And why I say that is because shaming never works. It never has, right? And to to put them in a circle and say you are the one.
Yeah,
You know,
you
they
are a
go
drug
into it.
dealer or whatever.
Those guys are going to go deeper into that life, because they don't feel like they can go seek for help anywhere. They're being pointed to. And one thing I've learned being in that life, losing friends to that life, whether it's jail or death or overdoses, and working with people outside of that, being outside working with people that are in that life, is that nobody wants to be in that life, no matter what they say. They just don't want to be. They can be gloating and forget this and forget that kind of attitude, big time attitude. But when you really get to their heart, they don't want to be the person that looks over their shoulder every day. They do understand there's a world outside of what they're living that's full of opportunity, possibility, genuine connection, and laughing moments and crying moments, not just looking over your shoulder and getting high all day moments. So the truth is, nobody wants to be in that life, and the more we point the finger and expose and shame them, the less opportunities they have to get out of that life.
You just reminded me of similar things, like with street women, right? Same thing. They don't want to be there, but they get pointed out as,
Yes.
they're just doing this for the money or whatever it is. And I see the same thing with the gang life. So from a healthcare prevention or even intervention focus, what we need to do is be open and not blame, and say,
Yeah.
look, it's circumstances, like I was saying, right? A lot of it is learned behavior, or it's behavior that they've seen, or a way for them to attach themselves to something solid, right?
Right.
So if we can just get in there and say, hey, we are here to help you. Let's figure out, do you need to do your grade 12 equivalency? Let's go do that. You don't know how to write a resume. You don't know how to do an interview. Like, let's teach you the skills, right? But instead, what we're doing is just pointing fingers and blaming. And we do that with women too, in relationship violence, right? In domestic violence situations, we always go, why didn't she just leave, right?
Yeah.
Well, why don't we ask, why did he abuse,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, we don't go the other way. And same with gangs, I feel like we need to ask, why did they get into that life in the first place?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what about society normalizes that life or glorifies that life where people feel like that's an option for them, right? Like, growing up, I would have been shot by my own father if I had gone in that life, right?
Yeah.
Because in our family, that was never, it was always, they never were very verbal in that sense, explaining things, but they'd always say, oh, you have to be a good girl. And then, you kind of figured out what that meant,
Yeah.
right? And in our generation, it was like that. But now we actually talk to our kids and tell them what our expectations are. What do we mean when we say, we want you to have a good life? Yeah, we want you to get educated, right? We want you to go volunteer in the community. All those things were things that were taught to me, but not necessarily said to me. We had unwritten rules. Anybody came for help, you always help them, right? And so that's why I end up volunteering a lot. You're asking me earlier, is because it's ingrained, right? And so if we accept these people and accept that it's circumstances that lead a person to make these decisions, and any one can make those decisions given different circumstances, then we begin to not victim blame, but open our hearts and help and say, okay, how as a society can we help?
I was going to ask you, Balbir, Dr. Balbir, that there is drive-by shooting. There is always a person killed every second day or third day, and there was one yesterday in Kakulam, where you live, very close to where you live. As a teacher, as an educator, as a community person, just ordinary person, how is that impacting you? How safe do you feel? Because time gonna come, the way the guns are flying everywhere, that innocent person gonna be killed. It happened at that 72nd and 120th Street.
Oh, yes.
He is a correction officer, and that there was a shooting there. How good or how safe do you feel?
Actually, I feel pretty safe, but on the other hand, if, like you said, if this continues, I may not feel as safe. Like right now, I feel like they're targeted shootings, and I stay away. But then when you see some of them are happening in daylight in parking lots, that's where you begin to wonder how safe is our community. I think we still are a lot safer than many countries around the world. I've been to Brazil, where you've got the army constantly on streets because it's not safe from drugs, etc. So we're not there yet, but again, I make a call to the community and our enforcement and policymakers that we need to put money into prevention so we don't get there. Like I said, I feel safe now, but for how long, right? All it's probably going to take emotionally, and it's usually an emotional trigger, right? It's not, I can justify right now because I'm thinking about it. Oh yeah, the statistics aren't bad, so I feel pretty safe. But if somebody is killed in front of me that's innocent, then it's an emotional kick-in, right? And that's when you go, oh my God, no one's safe.
Yeah.
Right?
And
so
that could have been me.
Yeah, and
or
that
my
could-
child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's where you begin to wonder. And I just call on the entire community, from government to ourselves, to figure out how to deal with it. And in my message to government is always work with us. Work with us in the community. We know the community, and we can figure out how we can have culturally appropriate programs. Yeah.
I was going to ask you then, right now, like I said, every second day or third day there is somebody killed or gang drive-by shooting happening all the time. Do you think it's due to pandemic because people had it and they were locked down under so long and they're coming out now, they don't care about anything, anyone? Or do you think that it might, once everything opens up, then maybe it might slow down and things might get better? Or do you think this uprising of these gangs, money, drugs and all that is gonna here to stay?
Well, I think there's two answers to that. One is that it is a sophisticated underground development of whatever they have going on. So that is the main reason that the violence is happening. The second answer would be, I think everyone is a little bit short-fused because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So like she was speaking about emotional triggers and reactions, I think a lot of people, if not majority of us in the world, are reacting much more to our emotions than we were before the pandemic, because we've been isolated, we're living a different life, we don't know what's going on when, we're losing our jobs, insurance doesn't cover this or that, we don't know where the next paycheck is coming, inflation is going up, so everyone's reacting, a little bit more than they were. And the third thing is, it's a lot easier to put on a mask and a hood these days because everyone has them. So that makes it easier to do targeted shootings. So it does have a contribution to it, but again, underlying of it, there's a gang war going on, gang violence going on. There's more sophistication to that than just saying it's pandemic. So exactly what she said, I subscribe to. There's prevention work needed, and to look at root levels of why these people are going through what they're going through and helping them with the avenues to get themselves out of that lifestyle.
So when you talk about prevention for gang violence, where does that need to start?
Well, I think there's many factors. in the work that I do, I work with people around their inner world. You know, I want to slow them down. I want to get them to talk about their emotions, their quality of thinking. What is it they're reacting to, and what kind of quality do they have? Can they discern between bad and good quality of thinking? Can they discern between helpful and unhelpful thoughts? And have them more, pay attention to their inner world more, so they become less reactive, more responsive, less in the dysfunctional behavior that follows reaction to emotions, and more into the functional patterns, creating, their life from the inside out. So I think that is number one thing I've seen in good prevention work. And when I'm saying that, I'm speaking of youth that are not yet involved, right? They're very likely to be involved, but they start understanding themselves more. And why I'm saying that is because that was my way out, right? I didn't understand myself. I was looking for a sense of belonging. At 13, I was stealing cars and found a sense of belonging with the boys, kind of thing. Like people are cheering me on. I'm like, they like me. I'll do more of this. And so I got involved in that. And the hardest part of getting out of that lifestyle, which she touched on earlier, was to become civilized again. That was so difficult for me. For 23 years of age, I wanted out. My parents' house had just been shot up. It woke me up, kind of like, oh my God, I got to get out of this lifestyle. I didn't know how to be civilized, because since 13 I was in there. I didn't know how to keep a job. I didn't know how to behave in society. So
and how to write a resume and go for interviews.
Any of it, yeah. To even speak to somebody in a
with
civilized
the
manner,
confidence,
I didn't know. So this arrogance was, I am this and I am that. And I remember getting a job and telling the manager, like, I'm not going to do this. Do you know who I am? And she's like, you're fired. And I had to learn all of that in a genuine way, like it was a beginning. So that's extremely difficult. And so, helping the youth see that, give them a little bit more foresight that it's not all glamour and cars and gold, and this is real stuff that you're gonna face.
And these are real people and real lives, right? That we are losing them. And especially for the parents, like we as a parent, when you see your child being killed in front of you, you always, as a South Asian parent or anybody, doesn't matter who, we always want to age, and we want our children to be taking care of their elderly parents, and we want them to bury us, not us to bury them. So it must be so heartbroken for those parents that see their child.
My best friend was shot when I was 18. He was 19. He was shot in the head, and watching his family after
He's gone.
It's completely different. It's completely different. His mom, it's been 20 years since he's died. His mom is still taking sleeping pills. So that's to say the least. Imagine the effect is having on her. Somebody who had him in her womb and had dreams for him, and it's just snatched away. So we don't talk about that, but seeing that reality of it,
it's not like it happened this week, we're going to have funeral, we're just going to make it in the news headline and all that, and funeral's done and everything. Just think of what the family, so many times the husband and wife, they split up. They are not together. So many times and blaming each other as well. Because of you, he's not longer there. So there is all kinds of, family is gone. It's not just one person got killed and he's gone. Last word, as an educator, what would you like to say to the people that are watching you or listening to you today?
I would like to say to people listening to us that it's really important that you talk to your children and you keep a good communication with them, and not always blame them and tell them what to do, but listen to them and help them connect. Sports is one way, but if your child doesn't want to do sports, they can do arts, they can do painting. And there are financial resources, because I know some families can't afford to do all this programming we talk about in terms of sense of belonging. There are programs in schools and also within the recreation centers that are set up in all the various cities across the province. So I would say keep communication open, learn how to deal with conflict between couples, and then also with your child, and then make sure that you tell them that you really care about them and you love them and you're there to support them, and I think that will go a long way.
Thank you. How about you?
You know, I couldn't have said it any better. You know, connecting with your children, creating a good relationship, having an open conversation, and listening. Listening, I find, is so underrated. You know, we research and we know what's good and we know what's bad, and we try and educate our family members, the youth, the kids, but listening to them, listening to what they're actually going through. I'll give you just a very short example. When I go into speak into schools and share my story and share, you know, any ways that I can help, what I've heard from 13 and 14-year-old female students is they're facing things that we would have never guessed. Like they have dares of taking their clothes off in the washrooms.
Yeah.
I didn't have that 20 years ago when I was in school. Now, we wouldn't know this if we're not listening to them,
Yeah.
right? We tell them this is what's right, this is what's wrong, here's what's good, here's what's bad. But if we stop and go, what are you going through? What are your challenges? What are the pressures that you're going through? So creating a safe container for them to speak, listening to them, and then shaping our resources to help them provide the help that they need.
Thank you so much to both of you. Looking at the clock, we run out of time, but thank you to both of you. You guys both bring such a wealth of knowledge, and I think to all of you that are watching today, these are the people, they are public figures. You can contact them. If you don't have their numbers, call me. I'll give the numbers to them. Thank you for watching Kamilla Singh Show.